The base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. We're in this weird gap of time right now on an Overreaction Monday where we're going to recap MLS Cup, recap the Seattle Sounders winning their second MLS Cup. Are they the team of the last decade? I think so. We'll talk about all that. We'll talk about MLS turning 25 next season, and we'll talk about next season because it starts in a few hours with the trade window opening up. 4 hours away from the MLS trade window opening up. Now, it's different than it has been in previous years, and I want everybody to understand how this could create a few different things. In previous years, the trade window was open for 3-4 hours the morning after MLS Cup. You had some deals that were already in place. That's about it. Now, you've got some deals that are reportedly already in place, but you've also got shopping going on. You've got potential dealing going on during the window because it opens this afternoon at 1 o'clock. It closes Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. There's an opportunity for things to happen. Not just at the open of it, and we'll see when these deals get announced that have reportedly been agreed upon. There are 3 that have been reported. Nashville bringing in Dax McCarty, Dave Romney, Columbus Crew bringing in Darlington Nagbe, waiting on terms of that one. The Nashville deals are decent bits of allocation money that they're shipping out, plus some expansion draft protection for the LA Galaxy in the Romney deal. We'll see what the Nagbe-Columbus deal is if and when it gets announced. But you're also getting other deals that are potentially being talked about. So we'll get into all of that this morning as things pop off, as people wake up out on the West Coast after celebrating an MLS Cup. A good one. I thought it was a good match. I missed the first 20 minutes of it after our SAA championship match went into overtime, and we'll talk about that this morning too. If you're wondering when my voice starts to falter later on, it was that match. A 4-3 overtime thriller will blow your voice out. So I hope it lasts for the whole show, but if it doesn't, well, there you go. I've got the cough drops on ready. I've got tea that can be made on a moment's notice. I think I'll be able to grind through it. Let's get into MLS Cup just a bit. We'll get John Nelson on in the next segment once he gets his technology working because, you know, that's how it goes with John sometimes. Eventually, it all kind of works, usually. But MLS Cup yesterday, good match. Different match than I expected. I didn't expect Toronto to take so much of the initiative. I thought they might come in and be defensive because you come in looking at it, Seattle has been very dangerous when they've been able to play on the counter. I wondered if Greg Vanney might take that away from them and make them carry the play. He didn't. Greg Vanney actually came out and played a whole lot more than I thought he would and should have probably gotten something for it. Stephen Fry made a great save in the first half. Toronto was the better team for the first 60 minutes. But they didn't get enough to show for it, and that's the issue when you're missing a player like Josie Altidore. Alejandro Pozuelo as a false 9, it's just different. You don't have that lethal threat in the final third, and we saw it when Josie came on. He did get a goal. The goal that Toronto gave up, they're not happy about it at all. I think Atlanta fans probably laughed a little bit at some of the explanations around it. There was a possible foul at the beginning of the sequence. It's crazy how these things happen, isn't it? So Jonathan Osorio felt like he was fouled. He wasn't. Seattle took far more touches this time to build forward than Toronto did in the situation with Nagbe in the Eastern Conference Final. And then it's a deflected goal. It deflects twice. I mean, it's as fluky as it can get. But Seattle gets that opening goal, everything changes. Toronto has to take more chances. Seattle's even more comfortable. From then on, Seattle was in complete control. But Toronto controlled the majority of the match. Greg Vanney said, in general, I thought we played well. We minimized their amount of counterattacks, especially in the first half. In the second half, we turned over the ball too much. The ball movement slowed down. Too many touches. It got bogged down, and when it bogs down, a team that wants to play in transition, when it bogs down to a team that wants to play in transition, you're in trouble. This is a really big point from Vanny, and it's something that Frank DeBoer has said many times this season. When you are the possession team, where you lose balls is really important. If you lose balls by finishing attacks, it's not a problem. If you lose balls between the lines, you're playing into the hands of a team that's looking to hit you on transition. So that became part of our issue. For me, the goal from Altidore, I mean, it cut it to 3-1, but, man, I mean, it just makes you wonder, if you're a Toronto fan, what it could have looked like if they had had him healthy the whole way through. Let's get back to that team of the decade thing. I think the only other team who has a real legitimate shout for the team of the last decade, 2010 through 2019, is the LA Galaxy. The Galaxy won one more MLS Cup than Seattle in that time frame, one more Supporter Shield, no Open Cups. And for me, the thing that I'll hit them the most on is that they missed the playoffs twice in 17 and 18. Seattle made the playoffs every year. They won 2 MLS Cups. They reached another MLS Cup final. They won 3 U.S. Open Cup titles. They reached one other U.S. Open Cup final. They won one Supporter Shield. That has to make them the team of the decade for me. And it's a credit to first Siggy Schmid and second Brian Schmetzer, and a credit to Adrian Hanauer and the front office. Garth Lagerwey has been a huge part of this from fairly early on in the decade to build a team, a few different teams. I mean, you're talking about 10 years. You're talking about a team that initially had Freddie Montero as the threat up top, evolved into a team that had a two-man deadly duo in Clint Dempsey and Obafemi Martins, and now is, I think, its most complete version of the Seattle Sounders with Nico Ladero, with Raul Ruidiaz, with Jordan Morris. This is a really good group. Now, they're going to have questions like everybody else going into 2020. I think defensively they're going to have to get better. The Chad Marshall retirement in the season created some turmoil for them, definitely. Roman Torres came back and gave a whole lot more than I thought he was capable of. Full credit to Roman Torres, another one of those figures in Seattle's fairly recent success. But they're going to have to get better there. You're going to have to deal with aging of players like Gustav Svensson, who's been so good since he arrived. Ladero's going to get older. You have some players that you do have to be concerned about. But the Seattle Sounders are as well positioned as anybody else to be a favorite going into the 2020 season. And that's what we're going to get into a lot today, is what teams need to do to put themselves in that group in 2020. I mean, I think if you look back at the table, LAFC, obviously one of the favorites in 2020. Seattle, obviously one of the favorites. Atlanta, one of the favorites in 2020. All, I think, are definite. NYC, you would normally put them there because they were the number one team in the East in the regular season, but managerial issues. What's going to happen there? I think you have to take a little bit of a wait and see. They did bring back most of the core of their team, so I think on the field they'll be very, very good. Toronto, depending on what they do with Michael Bradley, because that $6.5 million automatic option did not trigger because Toronto did not win. That match could end up costing Michael Bradley $4 or $5 million. That's craziness. It's crazy that option was in there. I would have loved to have seen the look on Toronto's front office when they realized, oh yeah, man, we agreed to that. That's one of those like crazy throw-ins that you say, okay, yeah, we're going to offer you a little bit less in salary or a little bit less of a bonus, but if this crazy thing happens, all right, fine, we'll give you that. And they're like, man, this is going to be a big, big thing. I think they're going to sign him. I think he's going to be back. I don't think that's the issue, but how much are they going to be able to pay him now? How much are they going to want to pay him? Is he going to be a designated player, or is he going to be a high TAM guy? Those are the questions for Michael Bradley going forward, and I think that does affect how you feel about Toronto as a potential favorite in 2020. Who's going to step up into that to challenge it? Does Portland come back after making MLS Cup last year? Do Sporting Kansas City return to a competitor in the Western Conference after a down year with a number of injuries this year? Does somebody new emerge in the East? Does Inter Miami come in all guns blazing like we thought they would, but Not a whole lot of moves just yet. They don't have a manager yet. Just wondering. Julian Carranza scored for Banfield this weekend in Argentina. It's one of your teenagers that you've signed. Pellegrini is the other one with Estudiantes. But they have not been as big and bold yet as we thought they might be. Does that change today? Do they get involved in the trade window? Do they make some big moves that shock everybody? I think you're going into 2020 right now, just a few hours after MLS Cup and a few hours before the trade window opens. I think you're going in looking at the favorites being the top teams from 2019, with the exception of maybe NYC, and with the addition potentially, depending on moves that are made, of Portland and Sporting Kansas City. Philadelphia, can they take that next jump? Can they get just a little bit better than they were this year? I don't know if that's a guarantee just yet. I'm intrigued, and I think you're going to see somebody else join that group with moves they make in the offseason. I'm just not sure who it's going to be yet. Is it Miami? Is it Chicago that gets big and bold? Is it Houston with Tab Ramos? Who is it going to be? Is it going to be the LA Galaxy? If they go make moves, if they let Zlatan go to wherever he's going to go and they go make moves. Anything's possible at this point. Does San Jose continue to develop under Matias Almeida? That's what's exciting about this time of year in a lot of ways, is everybody in this league can feel like a couple of moves, a couple of the right moves, a couple things fall your way, and you can be lifting that trophy next year. It's not out of the realm of possibility for there to be surprises in 2020. From today looking into 2020, we could be very surprised midway through the end of the season, in the playoffs next year. That's one of the great things about this league. It does have that peak MLS chaos that we all have come to know and love, or hate, or be afraid of, or whatever it may be. It's going to be a fun one. We're going to get into the trade window. We'll get into anything else you guys have about MLS Cup as well. It's Overreaction Monday, so tweet your reactions, whether they're over, they're under, they're on par. We're going to try to get John Nelson on the line again. Hopefully he wins the battle with technology this time around. And we're going to take a quick break. Be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Apolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency, or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. November 11th. John Nelson's phone decided to work finally.
I guess. I literally was in the office at 8:30, stared at my phone the entire time. The phone did not go off. And then after I see the notification in the DMs about my phone misbehaving, I decide to just go ahead and dive into my phone, and it says missed call 858, missed call 859, missed call 901. And I'm like, okay, that's intriguing.
A watched pot doesn't boil, sir. If you were staring at your phone, that's why it happened.
Of course.
You should know this.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, you didn't get a chance to see the game because you were traveling. I'm sure
I was on a
caught
plane.
up on it, though.
Oh, yeah. And I guess, I'd like Schadenfreude for 500, Alex, or irony. I don't know which really applies with the Richie Larea sound or quotes.
It was funny that it was Richie Larea who was complaining about not getting that call and saying that Toronto hasn't gotten calls all season.
Right.
I can think of a couple that they got that had a big hand in things. But okay.
But yeah, let's not confuse the situation with the facts and evidence, counselor. So that I drew a certain sense of irony from.
Well, what did you think? Was it a foul?
No. It just reminded me more than anything.
Hold up. You're acting like it's crazy to think that's a foul.
I didn't think it was. I looked at it, and to me, it looked more like in the old days. You remember the Fat Albert cartoon?
Mm-hmm.
You remember the game that they used to play, the neighborhood kids?
Not really.
Butt Buck?
No, I don't remember.
Okay, well, basically, all of the kids in the neighborhood would try to pile onto each other, and you'd jump on the top of the pile, and then whichever neighborhood kid caused the pile to collapse, that neighborhood group won the first round. To me, it just looked like he jumps up into the air and tries to either one of two things: defend himself from the oncoming player, or tries to
Who's defending themselves and jumping into the air, first off?
Sorry, my bad. I know, I'm missing a modifier here.
Well, he's getting low bridged. It's classic obstruction. It's a foul. It's a foul. I'm not gonna argue against that. I think it's a foul. But I think the most important thing is if you go back and look at it, Michael Bradley, they show his face as he's talking to Alan Chapman. And we were watching this. I went over straight to Old Blind Dog after the Oglethorpe game ended and got there maybe halfway through the first half. And on this sequence, they show Michael Bradley's face, and you see him saying why multiple times.
Right.
I couldn't figure out, that didn't make sense. I know they're arguing something about it. I thought maybe there was an offside. We didn't have the sound up super loud. I didn't think about the foul before. He keeps asking why. It comes down to, is that part of the attacking phase of play to be able to review? And I think Alan Chapman said it's not, and that's why we're not reviewing it. And Bradley's asking why. You can't go back and review it if it's not part of the attacking phase of play. I don't think it was. I think the one in Atlanta was, because you're talking about 4 passes, I think, that get you into the ball on the goal scorer's foot. Maybe 3. This one, it moved around a little bit. So I would. That's where I'm at with it. I think it was a foul. I think it's a foul that can get called. I think it's a judgment call in the middle of the field. I thought Osorio was impeded and was fouled. Didn't get the call. Ultimately, it's bad luck because it takes a couple of deflections after that. But no, you can't review it. You can't go back on that and review it. So that's what happens. Sucks, but that's the game.
Yeah. Now, from me in looking at, and I need to see an elongated version of that particular clip, but it looked to me like Osorio was jumping up into the air to protect himself, and he turned away from the
But you're not
Seattle
jumping into
player.
the air to protect yourself if you're not getting fouled. You're not on the ball and then randomly jumping into the air and protecting yourself. I thought the defender came into him with no intent to play the ball and took him out.
So I mean,
otherwise, if I'm on the ball, I'm not leaving my feet.
Right. Okay. And like I said, I thought that Osorio was trying to protect himself to evade and ends up turning his back and making contact with the player.
Again, you shouldn't have to protect yourself if you're on the ball.
No, like I said, I understand where you're coming from. Like I said, this is just me looking at a truncated clip and trying to.
It's not a long sequence. Like there's nothing about truncated clips. Like it's a very quick decision. There's nothing else to it. It's not about the length of it. That part affects the fact, can you go back and look at it? And I think they got that right by not going back and reviewing it. It's not part of the attacking phase of play. So is it a foul? Sometimes. I think it was. Sometimes it gets called. Sometimes it doesn't get called. Does it get called in the regular season? Maybe. Does it get called in the postseason? Probably not as much. Is it what cost Toronto the game? No, it's not. I'm sorry, it's not. It's not the same situation as what happened in the Eastern Conference Final. It was not the same because Toronto had bad luck. I mean, it's a bad shot from Leerdam. It takes deflection through the legs of Morrow and then I think off of Mavinga.
Right.
And it finds the back of the net. It's bad luck. The foul, I mean, sure, if you want to get, into that degree of it, then yes, anything that happens where a referee could have made a different decision, okay, fine. But the foul did not immediately lead to the goal. Bad luck, bad deflection was the reason the ball found the back of the net, and it's a 50-50 decision at midfield that, I think should have went Toronto's way.
But now let me ask you this. From what you were able to look, was Chapman letting them play?
Yeah,
separately?
That's his MO. I mean, that's how he calls games, period. Like, that's how playoff games are called the whole way through. So he was exactly what you would expect.
Okay. All right. So I see the I'm playing the play. I know this doesn't work well for live radio, but I see Osorio being impeded.
I think it's a foul. It's a judgment call. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's a judgment call. Like you're gonna have to make a snap decision. I'm fine with it not being called. I lean to the fact that I think it was a foul, but it's not this catastrophic thing. I mean, Chapman called 17 fouls in the match. That's very low. So in the context of that, I understand it. I get the frustration, but I think it's funny looking at it from the outside, if you're not a Toronto fan, to have Richie Larea say that Toronto never gets any calls.
No doubt.
When they got one in the Eastern Conference Final that was more egregious in a similar fashion to this one that they were complaining about. And Richie Larea took an awful dive in Toronto that gave them 3 points against Atlanta. So
11 touches between the time of Osorio.
It's too many.
Yeah, it's 11 touches. I just counted.
Yeah, that part's not even much of a question to me. Like I get if you're on the field, if you're Michael Bradley in that situation, you're talking to the referee and you're asking them to review it, and he probably said he can't, and Bradley's saying why. I get asking. I completely understand it, but it's too long of a period. It's not part of the attacking phase of play. If they had decided, and I don't know, there was never an official explanation as to why they didn't look at the Nagbe foul. If they decided that wasn't attacking phase of play, then there's your precedent, and there's no way this is.
So, I mean, you had the double deflection on the one goal, and then Raul Ruidiaz with the swim move after goal number for the third goal.
Mavinga's injured. The third goal, Mavinga can't run anymore, and you're having to go for it, and that's just where you're at that point. You've thrown Omar Gonzalez up top, and Seattle recognizes it, bombs it forward, and does exactly what they should do against an injured player.
Yeah.
I mean, Mavinga was banged up. That's what you have to do in that situation. Ruidiaz makes you pay. You pull one back through Altidore. If you'd had Altidore healthy in the postseason, I think it's potentially a different run for Toronto. Maybe a more competitive final. But credit to Greg Vanney, because they came in and controlled the game for the overwhelming majority of it, but they couldn't find the goals to win it. And the longer that happens, the more likely it is something can go against you. And it did, and it changed the game.
We have folks who are commenting about the match. I don't know what you were able to tackle in the first segment.
No, let's hear it.
Okay. Let's see. Where do we start? Shiva says that the game yesterday was okay. Definitely would have preferred Atlanta and LAFC for entertainment purposes, perhaps, but happy for Seattle to finally lift a cup in their own home. And if I may be a little overreactive today, I don't appreciate certain Atlanta players throwing shades at their coach on Twitter. Maybe it's my perception, shrug shoulders, emoji. But let the silly season begin. MLS media already picked Seattle and Toronto as favorited for next season.
That's okay. I mean, it's hard to say that they shouldn't be in that conversation. I think LAFC and Atlanta are also in that conversation, and most years New York City would be, but they're not right now because you don't know who's going to manage them. So give them a minute to answer that question. And I think there'll be some others, too, that become favorites as well. So, yeah, I mean, that's typical. Like, I expected more from Portland this year because of what they did last year, and it just never completely materialized. So it's normal. The tweets, I know Shiva's referring to a Justin Merrim tweet that made the rounds. Players are going to be vocal, and sometimes players will tweet things that maybe in hindsight they wish they hadn't. Well, this one was tweeted about substitutions changing the game. Honestly, I don't think substitutions, I mean, yes, a substitute scored a great goal for Seattle, don't get me wrong, but I don't think substitutes changed this game, and we've talked about it plenty of times in the Eastern Conference Final. I didn't feel like there was a substitution to make unless you're just making one for the sake of making one. There wasn't an obvious need. Atlanta was in control. Atlanta had all the chances in the world. There's really not much else you could have done, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. I thought it was a good game. I thought it was a good advertisement for the league. The atmosphere was amazing. This is why you have, home teams in a final situation hosting it. It's also why I think they should go to a 2-leg final and 2 legs across the board, so you get this in 2 games. But that's, again, just my opinion. Seattle gets their chance to win their first league title at home since 2007 when they won the USL First Division over the Atlanta Silverbacks at Starfire in front of about 5,000 fans. This was a little bit bigger, 69 plus. I think they had some standing room only tickets that went on sale about 3 or 4 hours before the game, and the lines were absurd. People trying to claim those. So it was bonkers, as it should be in a situation like that. As big as Seattle has been since they came into the league in 2009, this was their first MLS Cup final at home, and they made the most of it. Brian Schmetzer can feel better than everybody, and he should. Brian Schmetzer has done a much better job than he gets credit for. I think he is one of the best managers in the league. And he's kind of along those Bruce Arena lines to me. Would you call him a master tactician? Maybe not. But no, he gets them right for the most part because he doesn't try to do something crazy on a regular basis. He knows what his team's capable of. He makes subtle changes. He made a change moving Morris and Jones flipping sides at halftime. Little things like that. He unlocks things really well in those types of moves. I think he's a great man manager, and he gets the most out of the group that he has, and that's a talent. I think Schmetzer, somebody who doesn't get enough credit in this league. I think Greg Vanney is the same. I mean, the obvious play in this game for Toronto was to come in and be defensive, and they weren't. They came in and took it to Seattle for a long stretch, and oftentimes when you do that, you get a goal to show for it, and you get control of the match. You make that home team nervous, you can walk out of there with a win. They didn't find the goal. They didn't find the killer play in the final third. That was what hurt them. You're also missing your top scorer. That also affects everything for you. But Greg Vanney came in with a bold approach. I liked it. Brian Schmetzer got everything right, and Seattle is your worthy champion in 2019.
You look at Vanney, and I know that folks will sit there and remember what he did in midseason here. But
that doesn't make Greg Vanney a bad manager. That's crazy.
No, it doesn't.
No, that's such a But that's like not even a thing to bring up. I mean, honestly, because it's one game in a regular season when you have playoffs that, yeah, I think he rested players prematurely. I didn't think he needed to do that. I think it's still early. You didn't have a long CONCACAF run. If you're Toronto, you could have played guys in your match in Orlando, then your match here in midweek, and then back at home. I think he rotated a little too much at different points of the season. That's minor.
Yeah.
It's a minor thing. Did it affect their seeding a little bit? Possibly. Could they have gotten up to a 3? Maybe. I don't think they're getting up to 1 or 2. But that doesn't make you a bad manager. If anybody's questioning Greg Vanney's ability as a manager because of some bad rotation, come on. That's an overreaction.
Yeah, and I think that you look at what he was able to do with Pozuelo and the false 9 conversation that we've had during the postseason about how you have injuries, and then you take the pieces that you have and then put them in positions where they can do well. And we saw that with what they were able to do with Pozuelo in the postseason. To me, that's an example as to what Greg Vanney is as a manager, and taking what you have and trying to create things to continue to be successful about.
That's both of these managers. They both do a very good job of that. And to come in without your striker and into a hostile atmosphere, and against a team that maybe the safer play is to make them carry the play because Seattle's so good in transition, you didn't. You played your game maybe more so than you had played in the last 2. You know, they didn't look as Toronto-like in New York. They didn't look as Toronto-like here in Atlanta. But they did in Seattle. They looked very good. They controlled the play. They controlled the ball. They created chances, just not enough, and they couldn't find the back of the net, and they get punished for it on a double deflection, and they're going to complain about the foul call, and I agree with the complaints, but it's just the way the game goes sometimes. If you don't find a goal, you're going to get punished for it, and eventually it's going to catch up to you, and that's what it did here.
The numbers that Michael Ruiz posts this morning to carry on what we've just been talking about. Possession was basically 2-1 Toronto. Passing accuracy 84% to 71%. Yet Seattle had 3 chances created. Toronto had none. He said, "This is why soccer is so crazy sometimes." Shake my head, and then the facepalm emoji. He says, "Anyways, on to silly season, we should know how much we get for Nagby, then we figure out what we use that money to pay Gressel, as well as transfer Juan Fer and Soteldo from Santos. Transfer season equals done."
Okay, you just combined a whole lot of stuff there. Hold on one second.
He did.
Yeah, okay. Let's go back to the game, because I think the chances created numbers are incorrect, because MLS's app has had a bad habit of doing this. Yeah, they did. Toronto created 11 chances. Seattle created 10 chances. So, yeah, sorry, Michael. It's not your fault. The MLS app is stupid when it comes to chances created. This has happened before. Had this conversation on a Southern Fried Soccer with Doug. I'm like, no, trust me. I'm looking at the Opta numbers. Like, I know how many chances were created because I just talked about it. But the app, I'm like, nope, the app is incorrect. Ladero created 5 chances. He was the best on the field in that regard. Roldan created 2. Svensson, Victor Rodriguez, Raul Diaz each created 1. On the Toronto side, Osorio and Pozuelo each created 3. Alro created 2. De Leon, Benazet, and Altidore all created 1. So it was 11-10, barely shading Toronto on chances created. But I think that's the game, and that's the important part here from Michael's tweet is shots even, shots on target, basically even, chances created, basically even. Toronto had the possession, but Seattle's able to generate that much without possession. And you have to make those decisions early on when you're building a team. Are you going to be defined by having possession? Or are you going to be defined by what you do without possession? Seattle is a team that is best defined without possession because they're so good in that transition play. You can't transition if you have ball because then there's nothing to transition from. If you're best in transition, you need to figure out how you play without the ball. Is that pressing? Is that more of a trap? Is it setting a deeper line of confrontation? Is it playing a high line to cause turnover? What is it for you? You have to figure out what works with your group. But Seattle, in this game at home, when a lot of times you're kind of buoyed by your crowd and you want to go out and entertain them and you want the ball and you want to maybe control the game in that way, that's not the best way Seattle controls the game. They control it better when they have that transition threat, and they can create 10 chances and 14 shots and 6 on target with 35% of the ball. That's Seattle at their best.
And then that's why crazy so sad. So Michael's ready for silly season already.
Okay, the rest of it, we'll find out if the Nagby deal gets done, what the allocation money is when that gets announced. Reported to be one of the most lucrative trades of allocation money in league history. We've had 4 deals that have been for more than $1 million combined allocation money. So I'm assuming it would be in that ballpark. One of those was Atlanta trading 1.05 to Portland for Nagby, and according to the reporting when that trade was made, the potential escalators in it were not hit, so 1.05 was the final amount. Reportedly 1.6, Orlando giving Sporting Kansas City for Dom Dwyer is the record. That was before amounts were officially published in trades. So there's a little bit of, is that the correct amount? And there was escalators in that were easy to hit, and that adds to it to make it that 1.6 number. But it's unknown if that's 100% accurate. It's accepted as accurate. So you could, I think, speculate that that's the type of amount you're talking about here if and when that gets done. Now, Michael also mentions about figuring out using that money to pay Gressel and then transferring into players that would be designated players, and unless the rules change, that's not going to happen. So
or your
that
LA.
part, Michael, you might have to slow your roll a little bit. But we'll see.
Katie wants to know about overnights and have not seen them yet. Have been looking for. And he says she seemed many casual soccer fans didn't tune in because of football or the home team not involved. Cough, cough, looking at you, 17s. Hats off to Seattle for being hype at noon PST. But can we not do this day and time for a final again? Hashtag overreaction Monday.
Well, let's see what the numbers are. There's a lot of speculation that people didn't tune in. It's not confirmed yet. The reason this day and time was done is the final was going to be on ABC. And ABC wasn't going to do a Saturday night final like Fox did. It's also earlier in the year where you have college football in play for ABC or Fox. Fox did the Saturday night final the week after the conference championship games where they had the space to do it. I don't remember what ABC had on Saturday night, but they always have college football on Saturday night, so they're not going to pull away from that. You're talking about a big ratings difference. So with it being ESPN's time to do the final, and I guess the decision was made that they were going to put it on ABC for the first time since 2008, instead of doing a Sunday night ESPN final or a Saturday night ESPN final, which you had college football, so you couldn't do that, you're stuck with this. So I'll be curious to see what the ratings are. I mean, being on ABC, there's the potential for it being big because it's over the air. We'll have to wait and see. I will tell you that going to Old Blind Dog in Brookhaven to watch the game and walking in with sound and the game on all the TVs and people there to watch it was pretty cool. Didn't expect that on an NFL Sunday, especially when the Falcons were playing. That was what happened at one place in Atlanta. I can speak to that. I understand now, like, there's two aspects to it. When we had Nick on Friday, I understand not wanting to watch because it hurts to watch if you're an Atlanta fan. That's different. But I disagree with people saying that, like, oh, MLS doesn't matter if Atlanta's not in it. That attitude doesn't help the league. That attitude is one reason why national ratings are not great, because people aren't watching if their team's not in it. And that's not on the fans. That's something I wanted to make clear. I had a back and forth with a listener yesterday about it. No soccer fan in the United States is obligated to watch anything. They're not obligated to go watch the national team. They're not obligated to buy a ticket. They're not obligated to watch this game. They're not obligated to do anything. The team or league or program or whatever has has to compel them to watch it. That's what has to happen here. And it has to be compelling enough for people to say, yeah, my team's not in it. I don't have that rooting interest, but I'm going to watch. For me, I'm compelled enough to watch it. Others are compelled enough to watch it. Others are not. And that's something that the league has to get better at. It's something that is not just MLS has that problem. Baseball's had that problem with World Series ratings over the years. This time around, the ratings, I think if it had ended in 5 games, would have been the lowest ever, or one of the lowest ever. But when you got those extra games and the story got told, then everybody watched. That's something that every league struggles with. National Hockey League.
Yeah.
The ratings are big in the cities that are involved, and that's about it. MLS is the same as the rest of them. The NFL is really the only one that you're going to watch, and college football to a somewhat lesser extent, but you're going to watch a big game because it's a big game, even if your team's not in it.
Right. And to make either the casual fan, the non-sports fan, that non-sport specific fan, or the fan of that sport where the teams aren't engaged, I think that the network and the league need to make some effort to try to draw those folks in, whether it's through storytelling or other elements to that, so where it is appointment television. And so that's...
You're not going to get non-soccer fans watching the MLS Cup final. You can throw that one out for now. You don't need to worry about that. You have plenty of soccer fans, whether they are MLS fans or not, that would tune in if they are compelled to do so. Like, you're not going to get the random baseball fan to say, oh, it's a championship, I'm going to watch it. That's not going to happen. Really, the Super Bowl is the only thing that does that, and you're talking about a whole different level of property. So throw that pipe dream out. But can you get soccer fans to watch your league championship game? You need to be able to do that, and you need to maximize that. And how do you do that? It has to be a big deal. It has to be treated as a big deal. It has to be talked about as a big deal. The stories have to be told in a compelling way. The deep dives have to be told alongside just the big, shiny objects. Like, what was the story coming into this? In the grandest scheme of things, in a mainstream way, it was probably, this is the third time in 4 years that these teams have met. It's the rubber match between the two. That's it. You didn't have like mega superstars to build around. You didn't have I think Seattle is a team that has some national interest. You're hurt if you're MLS by Toronto being in it, because you're losing some American ratings that way. You'll gain them in Canada, obviously, but it's a trade-off you make.
And Josie Altidore being hurt didn't help either, from an American fan standpoint.
I completely and utterly disagree. Do you think there's one American soccer fan who said, I'm not going to watch the Cup final because Josie Altidore's hurt? If you can find that person, tell me, and I'd like to talk to him. I think that's no. That's the thing. Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley are your two biggest American stars in the game, and they're not going to move the needle. They're not. And that's not a knock saying they're bad players. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying, like, do they capture the mainstream attention? No. I think the last American players who did were Clint Dempsey and Landon Donovan, to a pretty lesser extent. Maybe Christian Pulisic can become that player from an American perspective, but he's not yet. These are all things the league has to talk about and figure out how they deal with going forward. I do think one of the biggest misses that they had is not having a bunch of public stuff, like game day type of broadcasts in Seattle with the year, because that's the second selling point. If you don't have the mega stars, it's Seattle's a soccer city. We're going to do a pregame show like game day from the parking lot and capture the march of the match and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And we're going to have a pep rally show on Saturday that's a preview with Sounders fans there. We're going to do all this to make sure that people see, like, okay, this is a wild atmosphere. Now I'm a watch. That's going to get soccer people to watch because, wow, this city's jacked for this. This is cool. Those things aren't happening enough. And I hope that they do, because you have to continue to grow this and put over the importance of this match. If you don't have storylines, with the season, with the team, with the superstars. In a case like Seattle, and I think in a case for anybody who's hosting an MLS Cup, showcase the city.
Absolutely showcase the city, and I think that if this is the end of your season, this is the event, capital T, capital E, trademark circle, then blow it up and show why it's so important, why this is such a big deal in this city, why this team is what they are to this particular city. Blow it up. Showcase yourself in the sense of both the host city, the two participating teams, and the league. Show yourself off. Put on your best suit. Put on the snazzy tie, and show yourself off. To me, it's a missed opportunity for the league, for any league that doesn't do something like this in this kind of a situation.
It's a huge selling point, and it's something that I think the league needs to use more. I mean, I really think a game day type of show is an absolute no-brainer for MLS to do, because that level of fandom, that level of passion from a college football perspective to a soccer perspective is probably the closest comparison. So, though it wasn't anything until ESPN, in this case, made it something for game day, it became something over time because you committed to it, you built it. Do the same. Like, for national TV broadcasts, do the same. You're going to have a pregame, do the pregame outside with the fans. You're going to do like ESPN did late in the season. You're going to do like a Twitter pregame or a streamed pregame. Okay, fine. Do it that way. Do it that way outside. I mean, even if you're doing it to build it and it's quick, it's 30 minutes outside before the broadcast starts, and it's out amongst the fans, and you've got craziness and people going nuts. That's a whole lot more compelling than a trip to a restaurant in that city. Come on. Get the fans involved, get that part of it, show me that. That's going to get people more excited. Build it that way, and then eventually for a cup final, do a half hour, an hour of pregame outside. In this case, do the half hour or hour on ESPN or ESPN2 or ESPN News or whatever, and have it streamed, and get people to go to your streaming service, and then, okay, the broadcast starts at 3 o'clock on ABC. Done. Cool. Do a morning of show outside. Like they do with game day. Do whatever in that case, because that's the selling point MLS has to me. That's it. Right now, okay, you've got stars, but do you have stars that will make you watch a game that doesn't involve your teams? Not many. There are some, but not many. This match didn't really have it. Okay, then sell it on the backs of the atmosphere that you're going to have in Seattle, and tell that story, and I think it's going to go over better. And I don't think that was done effectively enough on TV or in the mainstream media, and it hurt. It hurt the build-up to this, I think.
Just think of the last... Okay. I was just going to say, just take the last two markets that have hosted MLS Cup, and if you had done that kind of ancillary programming and lead-in programming to MLS Cup, what those atmospheres would have been like, and what those visuals would have been. Don't tell me MLS would not have seen this and understood, hey, this is a big freaking deal.
I would think so. I would think that they would have noticed it last year, and they would have noticed it in 2017 in Toronto and 2016 in Toronto. I would have thought that not just last year. It's not an Atlanta thing. It's Toronto, it's Atlanta, Seattle that have hosted the last 4 MLS Cups, and all of them would be prime opportunity to do that sort of thing and blow it up. Just like ESPN did with College Game Day. I mean, that was a crazy idea to go out and do a tailgate show, and everybody's like, this is never going to work. Well, it did. Now it's a big deal to see where Game Day is going to go. It still is. What, 20 years after it started?
Yeah.
25 years after it started?
I mean, and think about, and even when they go off the map and they go to Brookings, South Dakota, and they go to Fargo, North Dakota.
That's not relevant here. I don't want to get sidetracked about how great Game Day is. Like, that doesn't matter. for a final situation here. Because that's what we're talking about. You're trying to make your biggest game of the year. Let's just start there before you even get to national TV games and doing this in Colorado with nobody there and you're trying to dodge prairie dogs. No. For these games, yes. And if it starts with digital presentation, good. Do it that way. Because there is a story to be told, and that is going to sell your product better than anything else you have at the moment. Use that. Use that. Keep building your stars. Keep building your player base up. And keep making it a more compelling product. Because you can't complain about people choosing not to watch when they are not compelled to do so. That's the problem that I think soccer has had in the United States for a long time. And I think it happens at the lower leagues a lot. We're going to start something, and there's soccer people in the city, and they should support us. No, you have to make them support you. No, they shouldn't support you. You have to make it a case that they should support you and spend their time and their money on your product. Because it's a business. And this is the same. MLS has to convince soccer folks around the league and soccer people who haven't tuned into the league enough that this is the championship match, and it has to be a compelling product for people to tune in. And this was a compelling game. I think the game itself, once you were in, you were going to stick with it. It's just getting you to the door first, and that's something that MLS, in my opinion, has to get better at. It has to sell the product better in these situations. I mean, this felt like, it's on ABC. That's great. You have the ABC, ESPN synergy. Okay, cool. But it just felt like it was parachuted in. You didn't really have much on ESPN. Like SportsCenter had a 2-minute segment with Taylor Twellman previewing it, which was in the virtual studio, which was really cool. It's 2 minutes. Is that going to change anything on a show that oftentimes mock soccer? No, I don't think it's going to make anybody watch that wasn't going to watch already. So, okay, how can you do it? Start coming up with those strategies. It's something that I really hope gets better. And I think it's the time that it can, and it can continue to evolve. What else do we have on Twitter about the game itself yesterday?
John Nason's really surprised. Pregame on ABC consisted of 8 minutes prior to kickoff yesterday. In
Shocking.
The words of TT. Yeah, and then the words of TT, he posts the gif of what are we doing.
It's shocking. I mean, they had a Twitter preview, which is, okay, they did that on ESPN. I know that was something that they were talking about. That's good, but if you're not plugged into that, you're not going to know that's there. And I don't know what ABC had on before. I'm assuming local programming. I don't know if they had anything national at 2:30 or at 2 o'clock. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's in my opinion, it's worth it if the league does a time buy for a half hour at that point. I don't know what kind of rate they'd get, but something to have more than 8 minutes of preview for your Cup final.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know MLS is doing their own MLS digital previews. I know that, ESPN did theirs on social media. Get a little more coordinated on this stuff and make bigger and get it more mainstream, because there is an audience out there for it in the mainstream. There really, truly is.
Cassie says, no question, Seattle deserved the win after the scorelines in the last two. Toronto looked like they had the controlling performance that served them well in games like away at NYC this year, just no end product until Josie came on. Seattle fights and wins 2019. Congrats to them.
Yeah, Seattle was the best team, and they did fight and win. They played their style. And Toronto, allowed them to play that style. I wonder if it's something in the discussions leading into the match, if Toronto thought about, do we give them the ball and make them carry the play? Do we drop back more? Do we make them do something that they're not as comfortable doing? And they opted not to. And they played their game very well, with the exception of the final product. But I wonder how seriously they thought about conceding possession and making Seattle carry it, which is something that they don't normally do. It takes them out of their transition game, and maybe you get a different kind of match. It would not have been as entertaining. It would not have been as good of a match from a neutral perspective, but maybe it could have been more effective from Toronto. I thought they could go 5-3-2 or 5-4-1 and sit back a good bit and wait till 60 minutes, 70 minutes, and bring on Josie at that point and then go for it. But fair play to them. Fair play to Toronto for going for the game and nearly getting it. Just not quite good enough, and Seattle punished them for it.
And the last thing about the game specific is included in another overreaction from Katie, and we've talked about most of it. She says, let's rate overreactions from the weekend. A, Justin Miram on subs. B, all of England on VAR. And C, Toronto on the no call before the Seattle goal. Parenthesis, Siri, what is Schadenfreude?
If I'm going to rate them, I will put... I'm going to put all of England on VAR number 1. And I'll put Toronto 2 and Miram 3. The Toronto one has been one of the stories. It's been one of the big storylines on MLSsoccer.com about the game, which I don't know. I think maybe there could be some others, but okay. I wonder how much of the storyline it is on TSN and Sportsnet and our friends at Barn Burner in Canada on it. It could be. I don't know if it is or not. The VAR stuff, I mean, just so much of the complaints about VAR are related to the laws of the game or England choosing to implement VAR in a way that's different than anybody else in the world because I guess they think they know better than everybody else. And might want to look at some other places where it's worked. And yes, VAR in Major League Soccer is better than VAR in the Premier League. At me, Premier League. They actually use the monitors. I'm not trying to be funny and be hot takey. It is. It just is. How many complaints did we get about VAR this season? Now, yeah, they've had 2.5 years to work on it, but they've learned and it's been better. And it seems like every game in England is some like gigantic controversy whenever VAR is involved. I don't think referees know how to use it yet. I don't think the system is being implemented properly. And I think by trying to set this high bar and trying to say we don't want referees to go to the monitor, that you're making it worse.
Yeah. For me, it's the whole aspect of kind of thinking that it's monitor optional for some reason.
That's a small aspect of it, but yeah, it's an aspect of it. It's something that they need to utilize when the time calls for it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if they get it right eventually. But we're going to take a quick break. Come back. We'll get into the 2020 MLS season, which starts in 3 hours with the trade window opening up at 1 o'clock Eastern time. We'll be right back after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, Soccer Down Here, November 11th, 2019, which is the official start of the 2020 MLS season, because the trade window opens up at 1 o'clock. It'll be open until 8 o'clock Eastern Time on Wednesday. Just a couple more dates to keep in mind. After it closes on Wednesday, the expansion draft lists are compiled. They are made public on Saturday at 10 a.m. The expansion draft is next Tuesday at 5 p.m. The deadline to execute contract options is on Thursday of next week, the 21st, at 1 p.m. Those are all important deadlines because you have a lot of different moving parts for every team in the league right now. Minnesota is being reported as being in the market to bring Dom Dwyer to become part of the Loons. And Andy Greeter at the Pioneer Press updated this Friday afternoon. This is from the article at TwinCities.com. Central attacking midfielder Darwin Quintero has been put on the trading block, with the Loons eyeing Orlando striker Dom Dwyer in return, a source confirmed to the Pioneer Press. This had been previously reported in The Athletic. United coach Adrian Heath, given more power in personnel decisions this offseason, has pointed to Dwyer as one of his success stories when they were together earlier in their careers, and that was in Orlando in the USL days when Dwyer came in on loan from Sporting Kansas City. It's a bold move, and if Dwyer becomes the Dom Dwyer that he was in 2015 and 2016, and even further back when Adrian Heath was coaching him in USL in 2012 and 13, okay, it's also going to be 2020 next year. A lot of separation between those days, just saying. Darwin Quintero, his option to be picked up has been reported as anywhere between $1.75 million and $2 million. Orlando could make that work, especially if they move Dwyer. So we'll see. So far, the reports that have been published, and nothing is confirmed as of yet, but these are the ones that have made the rounds and have not been refuted heavily in any way. Nagby to Columbus for a substantial amount of allocation money. Dax McCarty going to Nashville, $100,000 in allocation money. Dave Romney going to Nashville, $225,000 in allocation money, plus expansion draft protection from Nashville to the LA Galaxy. Houston Dynamo have been quoted, their general manager, Matt Jordan, as being very involved in trade discussions. I think you're going to see others, too. I mean, this is going to be a very interesting window that opens up this afternoon, and you're going to see a lot of different potential moves that get talked about and moves that happen. I think there will be some that have not been talked about at all that get dropped on us either today or tomorrow or potentially Wednesday right before the window closes.
Which lends me to ask, are there any plans in our programming wheel to do any other extra special programming with the window?
No. I mean, it's a long window. We're not doing like we did in previous years where we did a trade window show because that was 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
I'd like to sleep.
Yeah, so ordered. So let me ask you this. With the reported moves that Nashville has on the table, how are you seeing them in the context of what Gary Smith wants to do with the folks who will be retained from his USL days, which won't be many, but philosophically, what are you looking at with these tea leaves with, say, Dax McCarty, Dave Romney, experience at the back to start things up? But what else? Is there anything else that you can glean from this?
Well, this is what you're looking at right now for Nashville, assuming the McCarty and Romney deals are done. So Up top, you have two unproven players at the MLS level, but have been extremely proven at the USL Championship level in Cameron Lancaster and Daniel Rios. Midfield, you've got McCarty, you've got Derek Jones, you've got Anibal Godoy, all very good central midfield options. You've got David Akam out wide, and you've got Hani Mukhtar from Germany, who will be joining from Brøndby as a designated player. Mukhtar, I need to see more on him. It seems like a good signing. Seems like an interesting one. I don't know what the numbers are going to be on him just yet. And you only have Romney as a defender. You don't have a goalkeeper yet. So it's way too early to say anything to expect about Nashville on the field. I think you've got to get the back line nailed down first before we have a better idea. Romney's solid. I think Romney's a starter in this league. He's solid. You've got a really good central midfield. You know, I like the pairing of either Godoy and McCarty or McCarty and Jones. I like Derek Jones a lot. Could you play all three together in the central midfield? Potentially, depending on how you set it up. There's definitely possibility for that. But, you know, where does Mukhtar fit? Is he going to play centrally? Is he going to play out wide? You've got a calm speed out wide. You've got two goal scorers in Lancaster and Rios that just haven't done it at the first division level yet. Rios is a player who was with Chivas de Guadalajara, went to North Carolina FC on loan first, and then Nashville signed him on an MLS deal, and he played in USL Championship this season for them. Gary Smith generally like to play in a 3-5-2. I don't know if this group necessarily leans that way yet because you don't know what the rest of the back line looks like. So let's wait and see there. Let's wait and see how he gets a few more pieces together. I don't think they're done in the trade window. I think they have to be active. You can't just wait until the expansion draft to get 5 more players. I think if they can find players that they like, they need to go ahead and pounce on them. Miami is a more interesting question for me because we've had huge expectations of Inter Miami and what they're going to be on the field. Well, right now they have 4 players.
Yeah.
They have Julian Carranza from Banfield, good young talent, teenager. They have Matias Pellegrini from Estudiantes, good young talent, teenager. George Acosta and David Norman, who Acosta was with the Austin Bold this past season. David Norman was with Pacific FC. He's a Vancouver Whitecaps Academy product. 2 younger guys that might or might not factor in. They might play mostly with the USL League One team. And Christian Macun from Venezuela is a defender that they have as well. I don't know if that's been officially announced yet. I know it's been heavily hinted at and all but announced. So, okay. 5 guys. And no manager.
Need more. Yeah.
Well, of course. But, I mean, I expected more from Miami at this stage. And it hasn't happened yet. The manager's the biggest question. I mean, what are they going to do? Because rumor, nothing yet. Who is it going to be?
Yeah.
Because that's going to inform a lot of this. And the longer you wait, the less options you have. So those are your 2 teams coming in. I would expect both to be active today, tomorrow, Wednesday. Nashville reportedly already has been, but we're waiting to see more. And those 2, I think, in the trade window are the ones that could really set the tone for what happens around the league.
Andrew Baker with a question this morning. Soccer listening in Germany. I guess that's where he's listening from this afternoon, local time. So from among the teams who didn't make the playoffs, who would you put above the line for next season with the information you have right now?
Okay, so let's see who all that gives us as possibilities.
I have 2.
Well, go ahead and give me yours if you already have them.
San Jose and Sporting Kansas City.
Okay, why?
I just think another year in San Jose with Almeida and his system and the personnel that are there. I think that, it was only 4 points and they were there toward close to the bitter end anyway. So I think it's just a couple points here or there for them. And Sporting, I don't think you can be as injured for 2 years in a row. At least I would hope not. That you're as injured as you were and going through schedule compression at the beginning of things. So I would say those two would be the ones I would say. And then my question would be maybe somebody like a Real Salt Lake, because you'd have to replace Nick Raimondo and net, because I know that if I'm bringing 2 up, I have to send 2 down. So my 2 to go down would probably be, and that's tight. I would say RSL would be my contender to be a 7 or to be an 8. And somewhere in that fight, maybe FC Dallas would be one way or the other, would be the other team that would not make the playoffs next year.
See, I got to disagree about Real Salt Lake just because of Raimondo. I don't think that is enough to drop them out of it. You have David Ochoa, who has taken the Real Monarchs to the USL Championship final, young homegrown who has bided his time waiting on this opportunity. I don't think you lose a ton there. I do think the West is going to be chaos next year because
yes, agreed.
San Jose, Sporting Kansas City, both are prime opportunities to get back into the playoffs. I think Houston could be as well. That's 3. Does Dallas stay where they're at with a young team? Does Real Salt Lake stay where they're at with a young team? Does Portland get back into the upper echelon? What do the Galaxy look like without Zlatan?
Right.
Does Minnesota fall?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the idea. Yes, I know we said that, but you got to make moves to be better without Zlatan. Like, if you just take Zlatan out of the team, well, you're not scoring as many goals.
And your defense is still awful.
Yeah, that's the bigger issue. I mean, I think ultimately over time you'll be better in the attack without Zlatan, but your defense still stinks. So, and you traded Romney, so now it's a defender that you didn't like on a bad defense that you still got to go find replacements. So, I don't know. The West is going to be absolutely chaotic. The East, I think Columbus will push for a playoff spot, and I think Chicago will push for a playoff spot. Chicago, because I think they're going to make some bold moves this offseason. I think they're going to have to, going into Soldier Field, they're going to have to make big, bold signings in the transfer window. I don't think they stand pat. And I think Columbus was really good in the second half, and we'll see what effect Nagbe has there, but we'll also see what other moves they potentially make to continue the shift away from the Greg Berhalter time to the Caleb Porter time. And I think it's taken longer than I thought it would, but they still need to make some changes to refine it. But they can, because you're not asking. It's a different conversation. Like Columbus, you're not asking for mega designated players. I think they're looking for a number 10. That's the one they're looking for, and you don't have to go spend $10 million to get a guy who can be effective in this league in that position. Chicago, I think, needs mega names. I think they're going to need a big name, because you're thinking about it from 2 fronts. You need to be better and get into the playoffs, but you also need to sell tickets.
So then if it's 2 up, then the 2 down?
I don't know if it's 2 up. I'm saying those are the 2 that could potentially be up. I could also see a scenario where the same 7 are the same 7.
Yeah. I mean, because DC, you got to wonder how they're going to fill their gaps and their absences with Acosta and
DC
Rooney.
is the one that you're looking at in the East. I mean, DC is definitely the one you're looking at in the East. Potentially Red Bulls. I think New England will continue to get better. But DC is the one that I think is the most at risk of missing out in the East, just because you've got a lot of gaps to fill.
Yeah, so that was the one that I had circled with possibly Red Bulls too. So that's what I was looking at when Andrew posed the question. And let's see, who else is on the board this morning? Okay, Tafka is saying, I'm not saying I want it to happen at all. I don't think it will. But with the trade window coming and a bunch of teams angling for upgrades, Gressel's AM values easily over $1 million, fans should perhaps brace themselves.
I mean, I think fans have to brace themselves in general, because you have to listen to every potential opportunity right now. If you're not, you're not doing your job. Like, you never know what can happen. We'll go back to the end of 2017 when Darlington Nagbe became available. It wasn't expected that Caleb Porter would walk away from the Portland Timbers. It wasn't expected that Darlington Nagbe would be on the trade market. But when that happened, Atlanta pounced on it incredibly fast, and they had saved up some allocation money in case of an opportunity. This was the opportunity. Boom, they did it. You never know. Somebody might come in with an offer that is just too much to refuse. A player might become available that you don't expect and you valued and has been high on your board, and then you might have to jump on it. So you never know. And yeah, you have to be ready to make any move possible. And as we've talked about the whole time here with the roster, after year 3 is where you get to some of those original contracts coming up or going into option years. You've got to think both short term about being competitive in CONCACAF next year, about being back in MLS Cup next year, about winning a Supporters Shield next year. You've got to think about all that stuff because that's the expectations that this club has set from day one. But you also have to think long term, like who's coming up? You know, do I need to sign a player to a long-term deal? Do I need to sign a short-term deal? What's best for the club as a whole? And you have to find that balance. And those are the decisions that have to get made, especially in a salary cap league. Look, it's a different conversation. It's not the same as a team in Europe where you don't have to worry about a salary cap. You're worried about a budget, and you can't go over your budget, but you find ways to stretch if an opportunity comes, or if you want to re-sign a guy, if you want to give a guy a raise. You can't just do that as easily here. So that's the challenge. And you've got to find value in players. You've got to find players on good contracts that give you more production than you're paying them in a just straight-up dollar for production standpoint. And you've got to hit on signings, and you've got to avoid misses. That's where you're at. It's not going to be easy right now because it's not just Atlanta dealing with options and difficult situations. Every team's going to have them. Players are going to become available. Then you've got to be out there listening to who can fill in here, who can I go get for this price, who can I get a good deal on, who's too expensive. It's a lot of moving parts. It's a whole lot of moving parts. And your guys that are on option years, that triggers a 1-year option. It's not a multi-year contract. So, 1, there's the option to pick up. 2, it's can you sign them to a long-term deal. And if you can't, you might need to trade them when you pick up the option or let the other team pick up the option, either way, because you don't want to lose them for nothing when their contract runs out if you don't think you can sign them to a new deal. That's where DC is.
Right.
And it's a cautionary tale because if you run into the situation that DC is in right now, you could have had, let's just say that you get minimal transfers. We're not even going to talk about the dollar for dollar part of it right now. Let's say you get the minimum amount to make these things happen in a transfer, and all you're doing is taking said money and turning it into allocation money. You could have had $750,000 in allocation money on Wayne Rooney, on Luciano Acosta, already had it on Bill Hamid in the past, and you could have had that to work with. Instead, you had none of it, and instead you actually had to spend to get Bill Hamid back on loan. And now you've got to make a decision on, can you sign him on a permanent deal again, or can he work out another loan, or does he go back to Europe? Instead, you look at Atlanta when it comes to Darlington Nagbe, and according to the reports, he wanted to move back to Ohio. He wanted to move closer to home for him, and Atlanta will get a haul in allocation money that they can use to improve their team. Those are the difficult decisions that you have to make sometimes, and that's what is so interesting about this trade window and just about the MLS windows as a whole, because the cap comes into play, the allocation money comes into play, and just how teams deal with the transfer market, as I think teams are still learning how to do that. It all is incredibly fascinating at the moment, and I'm expecting fireworks in this trade window. And if saying that, I've probably jinxed it, and it probably won't be much, but I'm expecting fireworks because of the 2 new teams coming in, because of a lot of teams in a position to deal. I think you could see quite a few moves.
And speaking of haul, when Percy Herrera came in when he first noticed it off of Football News and Radio Trends America that, and once again, take these reports with the proverbial grain of salt, that Corinthians is interested in either or both PT and Barco.
No, that's not what was written. What was written was they were interested in both. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm looking at my modifier. PT Martinez e Ezequiel Barco. Yes.
And that's craziness. If it was either or, that's a different conversation entirely. But both Corinthians, when you look at their history, their record transfer payment was $17 million, and they did it twice. I think it was $17.1 million. Once for Alexandre Pato, and once for Carlos Tevez when he was 20 years old, and they brought him in from Argentina. That's it. Last window, I think the most they spent on a player was about $3 million. Club valuation, like when you look at their roster, it's less than $20 million, more highly valued than Atlanta United. From a business perspective, I don't know what their P&L is, but to sign two players that would probably break your transfer record in one offseason feels like an incredible stretch and an incredibly flimsy rumor. South American rumors as a whole, you have to take with a gigantic grain of salt. Huge, gigantic, Salt Bay with a backhoe of dropping salt on things. It's just, you get a lot of speculation that turns into this type of stuff, or you get a lot of agents, or you get a lot of just fans saying, yeah, this would be cool. Okay, let's start this rumor, and things get started. So you have to take it with a gigantic grain of salt. I don't know the outlet. Brazilian media has been as unreliable as anybody else, maybe more so when it comes to this kind of stuff. So it doesn't make any sense when you compare past history. It just doesn't.
But that's, once again, you're going to see these things and consider sources and look at histories and followers and all that kind of stuff. So when you see stuff like this come across your bow or your timeline, just understand where it's coming from when you see stuff like this. With any transfer window, for me, that's been over the last couple of years anyway, that's the biggest thing, is that, here's what you see. So just kind of do a little research on it, because you're going to have a lot of stuff flying off handles and information from source A and source B, and then you have to go back. Just look and do some research on it and go back and see credibility, that kind of stuff.
And even then, sometimes it's not clear. I mean, that's the nature of the silly season. You're going to get talk that makes sense but is inaccurate. You're going to get talk that makes no sense but ends up being proven true. And then you look at where it came from and you start to realize, okay, this source, maybe they knew something that we thought they didn't. It's just it's the nature of silly season. It's craziness. I mean, think of college football recruiting, think of the NBA trade window, think of all of it where things get said, things get twisted, people don't know, people run wild with speculation. That's what you're dealing with. And Atlanta United is going to be lumped into that more than any other club in the United States. I mean, more than an LAFC, more than a LA Galaxy at this point, because of what they've done in previous years and the stature of the club right now. So you're getting linked to Jefferson Soteldo, who's with Santos, a young Venezuelan, exciting young player, but he would be a designated player. Right now you don't have a designated player slot. So you're going to get lumped into all these conversations. And could they happen? Sure. I mean, I guess anything can happen. But you have to take it with a grain of salt and try to look at your sources. And even then, sometimes that doesn't inform everything. But this one with Corinthians, it just feels very out of touch with what they've done in previous years. This isn't a big spending club. Generally, they develop young talent and sell it. They haven't gone out and bought talent on a regular basis.
And Daniel Price, he has a hard time believing it. He says Barco has stated that he wants to go to Europe, not back to South America. Besides, most South American clubs couldn't afford what Atlanta would want to sell them for, especially Barco's
Brazilian
making a
clubs
name
are a
for
little
himself.
different. You're talking about different level of money to work with. So you can't do that either. You can't say like, well, South American clubs can't afford it. Some can. And there is a difference between Pity Martinez and Ezequiel Barco in that regard, and the age is a big one. I don't think Barco would want to go back to South America right now. It'd look like a step back internationally for him from his eventual move to Europe, because I think he will go to Europe. He's that good of a player. Pity's a little bit older. Is there a European move for him in the cards? There wasn't, and he came to Atlanta. There still could be. I mean, I think he's got the talent to, for sure. I don't even think that's a question. But it's going to be the right team in the right situation, and it's more difficult because he's older. So would he be more enticed by going back to South America if it's a crazy amount of money? I think so, but it's still going to have to be a crazy amount of money because it is a step back, even if it is to a big club like a Corinthians or a Flamengo or Santos or whoever, the top clubs in Brazil. It's going to be a step back. It's going to look that way. So it's tough. I mean, but these are the situations that are going to come up in a silly season. So there you go.
And Daniel says, he says, it's that time of year we all come to dread. No, it's not tax time. That's April. He says, it's roster changes. May silly season begin, and may it not make me too depressed. He might go through MLS withdrawal too.
Yeah, the thing I would just say to people, like, yes, you have your attachments to players, and it's 100% understandable. It's what it means to love the sport and love the team that you support. But players do come and go. It's just the nature of it. And I think in soccer it happens more than in other sports. They're going to move on to different places. Managers come and go. Managers generally are staying in place for 3 to 4 years now. Players roughly the same. And there's going to be new players that you fall in love with. I mean, it's part of the nature of the sport. You don't see guys spend a whole career at a club very often anymore. And when they do, you cherish it. So getting like depressed about it, don't do that. It's okay. There's going to be other guys, but it's all about the badge. It's all about the kid. It's all about, the club as a whole. The club is not defined by individual players or individual people. The club is almost like a living, breathing organism in and of itself. And that's what you support. I think that's what really, gains the support of the people is the club, is the badge. Because the people wearing it will change from time to time. It's just the nature of life.
Well, just think about it in the sense of other sports like college football.
Well, that's different.
Where
you have a limit. you can't stay your whole career at college.
No, but what I'm saying is that with players, they're only there for a maximum of 5 years. So players are always constantly changing out. But you're always going to be a fan of that college football team, regardless of, if your quarterback is Eric Zier or David Green or Jake Fromm.
Yeah, but
you're
always
that
going in. That's the thing. Yeah. That's what's different about it is like going in like, hey, this guy's only going to be there for 3 years or maybe 4 years, or they might redshirt 1 year and you don't know anything about him for a year. But yeah, that going in. This is not the same thing. Like I think there's still a romanticism about a Chipper Jones spending his whole career with the Braves. Well, how many other guys from that era didn't? Even your star pitchers like Maddox didn't start his career or didn't end his career with the Braves. Glavine left for the Mets. Smoltz left at the end of his career. Like, it happens. Andrew Jones didn't spend a whole lot of time in Atlanta. He went elsewhere too. Like, all that stuff happens. And football, basketball, it's all the same. Dominique Wilkins got traded. there's that romanticism about a player spending their whole career, but the reality is that it just very rarely happens, and I think it happens less in an MLS and in soccer as a whole. I mean, we've just seen it here with Nick Rimando, but he didn't spend his whole career in RSL, just the overwhelming bulk of it. You know, Chad Marshall spent it between two different teams. DeMarcus Beasley moved around all over the place. Ended his career with the Dynamo. Tim Howard, all over the place. Michael Parkhurst, all over the place. But you have fond memories of the time here. Like, it's the nature of it, because you're going to be developing new talent that has to have a spot to play. You're going to be able to go get talent that raises your team, and you're not going to be able to re-sign guys who they want to go chase their next dream, or they want to go play in a different country, or they want to go play for a different manager, or they want to go play in a different and get a different challenge. All that stuff comes up. It's a hard time of year, but you can't get depressed about it. You have to look at the opportunities that are created. And I think when fans get down on these situations is when you know a team is tanking or you know a team is rebuilding. Well, that's not the case. And I think the nature of MLS makes it silly when teams say that they do need to do that. I disagree with this whole idea that you come in, it's going to take you 3 years. I thought that was crazy when Minnesota said it, and I thought if they had made better signings and used their money more effectively, they wouldn't have had to do that. So,
right. Especially after that start.
Yeah, well, they made bad signings.
With the Scandinavian variant was a bad idea.
They made bad signings. Doesn't matter where they're from. I mean, there's been good Scandinavians too. It's just you made bad signings. If you'd went out and got good Scandinavians, it's a different story. If you'd went out and got Lassi Lapalainen, then different conversation. But you got Vadim Demidov, which was a complete and utter failure.
League MVP.
No. Everybody listened 2 years ago and know that joke.
No. But we are officially caught up on the Twitters. What else is on your mind?
First off, a break is on my mind, and then we'll be back to talk about more things on my mind or your mind or other people who are tweeting on their minds right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, November 11th. MLS trade window opening up in 2.5 hours. No more rumors as of yet. Just the 3 deals that have been reported as completed. They aren't official until they are announced by the teams in the league, so stay tuned in that regard. Yesterday, if you missed all of our conversation about this all of last week, the Southern Athletic Association NCAA D3 conference tournament was in Brookhaven. Oglethorpe hosted it. Yesterday was the final. Friday night was extremely cold for 2 games, and both of the top 2 seeds got through, but they had to work for it. So it was Oglethorpe and Center for the 3rd straight year in the conference final yesterday, and it was one of the best games I've ever called. 4-3, extra time, golden goal, Center won it. You had all kinds of swings of emotion. You had 2 yellows to Center and a red card to one of their center backs. You had Alexander Garuba, player from the Atlanta area, for the Center Colonels, who had a hat trick. Gives him 21 goals on the season. That's a record for his school. You had Oglethorpe battle back from 2-1 down to go up 3-2 before a penalty gave Garuba a chance to equalize with 10 men. And then 2.5, almost 3 minutes into extra time, Garuba scored the golden goal on a great pass out of the back after Garuba got in behind. Oglethorpe got caught. Garuba with a great finish. It was a spectacular game, and it was a great crowd who came out. Thanks to anybody who listened, and I know some of our listeners did come out and see this on both days. It was a great crowd. It was a great atmosphere for NCAA D3, and I think it was a great advertisement for the conference and the overall level of play. Center gets an NCAA bid. Oglethorpe has to wait. They missed out on an at-large bid last year where they had a very compelling case for it. I think they have a very compelling case this time around as well. They beat one of the top teams in the country from California at the beginning of the season when they came over for the Sonny Carter Invitational at Emory in Claremont Mudscripts. Their losses were all by 1 goal, with the exception of one to the ODAC finalist Roanoke, who should get in. It was a really strong performance from a group. They had 10 seniors in this team with Oglethorpe, and it was heartbreaking to see their season end like that, regular season, and hopefully not their full season. But based off last year's history, you do have to wonder if they'll get the at-large bid. Yeah, there's a bit of a, I think, bias towards the Northeast when it comes to NCAA D3 because that's where historically the best D3 teams have been. But I think the SAA is showing, both with this final, both with what Oglethorpe and Center have done over the last few years, and honestly what Barry and Millsaps did to get to the semifinals, and other teams in the conference who have battled this year and previous years as well. It's a good conference. It's getting better every season. I mean, the jump from last season to this one, for me watching it, was huge. So I think it's time for the national side to look at some of the talent in these teams. And I think it's also time for like your USL League One teams, your NISA teams, maybe even your USL Championship teams, to look at some of the talent in NCAA D3 that wasn't a development academy player coming out of youth, or wasn't a highly recruited D1 player that maybe needed to go to a smaller school, and that's what has helped them blossom. I mean, Garuba is a talent who can play at the next level. I think there's multiple players from Oglethorpe that can play at the next level, and I hope that they get that opportunity. But it was just an absolute blast to call it. It was a lot of fun working with Jessica Charman this year on the games. I think this one was definitely our best broadcast. There were some transmission issues because I think a lot of people were actually trying to watch it and get the replays of stuff and listen to us at the field yesterday. Yeah, I think that had a huge hand in it. So it's going to get posted. It was recorded. I know the second half was fully recorded with our audio. The first half might be a little spotty, but it was a lot of fun all season long, and we'll have John Aiken on for a 1v1 once we know the resolution here with the NCAA tournament. That tournament bracket gets announced, I think, at 1:30 for D3 this afternoon. Fingers crossed for the Stormy Petrels. I hope they get a chance to continue their year because I think they're one of the best teams in the country, and I hope they get a chance to prove it. So we'll have John on to talk about the season, talk about D3 as a whole, and talk about the challenges, of recruiting at D3. I mean, you're kind of having to wait to see. I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he said he's getting some commitments now that he wouldn't have gotten before. Guys who would have waited out to see if they would have got a D1 offer, and now they're making that decision. No, this is where I want to play because of the opportunities that are presented to this team. And it's not just Oglethorpe in the SAA. It's not just Oglethorpe in D3. Emory has a great program as well, but it's growing, and it's another part of that domino effect that I think we're starting to see with soccer in the South, is that because the youth clubs are better, because you have more professional environments, you have more opportunities for players to see a higher level in their hometown up close, the overall level is improving, and it's youth is better, college game is better. It's all, just a deeper, more enriching soccer community in the South now because of all the stuff that, we've tried to chronicle over the years. So it's very cool to see at all different levels this growth happen. We will talk about soccer over there tonight at the Brew House at 6 to 8 o'clock. There are things to discuss. The trade window could be one because that could affect some potential moves outside the league. The Argentine League was nuts this past week with the top 4 teams all failing to win. Diego Maradona won another game with Gimnasia, and they're trying to climb out of the relegation basement. They're getting closer to doing it. It's not completely out of the realm of possibility that he keeps them up. But, you also had a big game yesterday. I think one a lot of people were talking about with, I think, a team from Liverpool and a team from Manchester.
So I heard.
And one of the managers was not very happy about some things that happened in the match. We'll talk about that. You also had everyone's favorite topic of Mondays with racism. We'll get into that as well. So all kinds of stuff tonight on Soccer Over There, 6 to 8 o'clock at the Brew House. Come out and join us if you can. We'll put you on a mic if you have questions. If you have Soccer Over There questions, you can go ahead and tweet them at us at Soccer Down Here as well. We'll get into them tonight. And don't forget, on your calendars, 2 dates.
Yes.
Wild Heaven, November 19th. Myself, Mike Conti, Kevin Egan doing a broadcasters roundtable. That'll be after the expansion draft, which could be interesting. But we'll be talking about how our seasons went and all the things that we did in terms of broadcast and travel and all the fun stuff there. But we'll talk about the team and what 2019 was for us, what 2020 could be for us, and all the things there. So we'll also be doing some fundraising for the Soccer in the Streets program at the West End, considering this is right down the road from the West End Station Soccer. So November 19th, 7 o'clock at the West End location of Wild Heaven Brewery. And then on December 4th, up in Canton at the Reformation Brewery location there, we'll be talking to our friends from the Cherokee Soccer Association and a lot of youth soccer conversation, but also that's going to be after free agency is open. There's going to be plenty of Atlanta United MLS things to talk about as well. It's going to be a normal Soccer Down Here show with some guests from the Cherokee Soccer Association, potentially others as well. So that is December 4th at Reformation in Canton. So for those of you on the north side who are always asking us to come see you, well, we're getting closer. We're coming to see you. And we'll try to swing all around the north side of the metro area as we go. But those are the 2 dates that you got to put down on your calendar. And hopefully we'll see you there.
And also, if you'd like to show your support for the show, our creative team has done stuff, and you can go to Teespring and buy SDH stuff to help support the show, because that goes in the proceeds, the net go into rolling everything back into the show so we can do more stuff and go more places and buy more things and do more stuff and go more places and buy more things and see more people. So it's go to the Teespring site and the Soccer Down Here, and you can get T-shirts that talk about panqueques and mugs that talk about mucha plata y'all and all that kind of stuff. So go to our Teespring store and get stuff as well, because that helps out the show. It helps out the network. It helps us expand and grow. And honestly, guys, we couldn't do this without your support, because when we started this, this is our 3rd year of doing the show. And honestly, it's very, very humbling to see you guys pointing your phones at us and showing us that you're listening on apps as we're walking past each other in the Gulch and coming out to all of our appearances and things like that. It's very cool. It's very humbling, but your support has been tremendous all this time. And so go to the Teespring store, and that's another way to help us out there too.
All of the help and all of the turnout at events, it's much appreciated. So thanks, y'all, for being part of the SDH Nation. All right, anything else on Twitter we need to hit now?
Nope, we're caught up.
Okay, so you guys need to send some reactions to us. Other stuff from the weekend, I mentioned it about Real Monarchs. They're in the USL Championship final. They will be headed to Louisville to face Lou City, who early in the season, you would have never guessed that they would have made it back to a final. They somehow did, and somehow survived Indy 11 on the weekend. It was a kind of a wild game where the last minute of stoppage time in the second half equalizer, and it just seemed to crush Indy 11. Louisville goes through. Real Monarchs needed a last minute of extra time goal, 120th minute, to get past a pesky El Paso Locomotive to get to the final. So you have Lou City and the Monarchs that will be facing off. What day is that? Is that the 19th?
Efforting.
It's kind of a weird one because I don't think it's on the weekend. I think it is the 19th. It will be on ESPN Deportes, 17th, sorry. Sunday the 17th, 7:30. It's on ESPN2 and ESPN Deportes. That should be a good match. Louisville City is a fun team to watch. Real Monarchs have a mix of Real Salt Lake players, but also young players from the RSL Academy. Both play good soccer. Should be an entertaining one. So Sunday the 17th, 7:30, ESPN2, ESPN Deportes, your USL Championship final.
And Lou City, according to the article that's been written, Lou City would be the 538 has Lou City as a 64% chance to win the title at Lynn Stadium.
Yeah, they're at home. That seems about right. You know, home game is obviously they're the favorite. U.S. women last night won 6-0 over Costa Rica. No real surprise on the result. Lynn Williams had a couple goals off the bench. The first two games of the Vlatko Andonovski era, good. Last two games of 2019 for the team, good. Players get a break now. Andonovski will have a camp for non-pool players here coming up. It'll be a chance for him to broaden the pool a little bit and look at some talent that maybe he's thought could make that jump, or some talent that needs another look that's been on the fringe. So looking forward to seeing how this team continues to evolve under Vlatko Andonovski. I think it's too early to really take much stock in things looking different. And it's unfair to expect them to. But you won two games that you should win, and I think yesterday scored some goals in doing it, which is always fun. And it's great to see Lynn Williams get that opportunity. She's a player who I felt has deserved the opportunity. You have a ton of talent. You're going to have to make difficult decisions, and Jill Ellis made the decision to leave Williams off the World Cup roster. Jess McDonald got that call instead, but Williams showed her quality last night with a couple goals.
Daniel Price with a question. He wants to know what you think of Zach Steffen being removed from the U.S. M&T roster due to, quote, injury, yet he still started in Germany.
Well, let's get the terminology right, because this stuff is important. He wasn't removed. He was never named. So that's the important thing, is he just wasn't named to this roster. Every roster is different, and we're actually still waiting on the full roster for these Nation League games, which, oh yeah, by the way, Friday, U.S.-Canada in a must-win game. So this is Zach Steffen's statement on it from his Twitter. After much thought and consideration between myself, my club, and the national team staff, I'm disappointed to have to pull out of these next two international games. Though a difficult one, we all believe it's the best decision, as I have been dealing with a knee injury for a while. It's been a very frustrating and uncomfortable road, and with this break, we believe I can get back to good health. I have full faith in the boys to get the job done. Knee tendinitis has been one description of it from reporters. Don't know if that's accurate. It's not what Steffen said. But if it's something like that, I mean, yeah, he can start the club game and then rest 2 weeks and not play internationally and then be maybe in a better position of health. Yeah, absolutely. No, all that makes sense. These are competitive games, though. And this type of thing makes you feel like, well, it's not being taken as seriously as it possibly should. If this was a World Cup qualifier, would this happen? I don't know. If it was a must-win international World Cup qualifier, I don't think this happens. This is a must-win game. Now, you do have other players who can step in and do the job. I don't think that's a major issue here. But what this tells you is that this game is not must-win if you're going to agree to have a player skip it because of an ongoing tendinitis issue that wasn't bad enough for him to miss his club game. It just adds to the list that this is going to be an issue if the U.S. doesn't get the job done against Canada on Friday. It's going to be a huge issue. It's going to be in the conversation, and it should be. And it's going to open up a lot of complaint. I don't know. I don't know how this gets handled ultimately. It's a problem, though, in my opinion. And it's a bad look that he played for the club and is going to miss 2 weeks now, and he's not going to play with the national team, but he's going to miss a must-win game against Canada. I don't know. I'll be curious to see what the mood is in the camp, because if you're in the camp and Stefan is missing it due to potential for club injury and everybody else is there, what does that do with the group? What does that do when Stefan comes back? I don't know. It just opens up a ton of questions. It really does.
Shiva with a question, and she wants to know how different she says, do you see Atlanta United looking different next year, not roster-wise, but play style? In other words, Frank de Boer having a chance to put more of his stamp on the team, and will that look different?
I don't think it'll look that different. I think you got to see a lot of it. I mean, ultimately, Frank de Boer wants to control games, and he wants to control games with the ball. I think that's the most important thing, and he did that in a 4-3-3, and he did that in a 3-5-2. Honestly, I think he controlled it more with the ball in the 4-3-3. So, I mean, I think we saw different things. I think we'll see more consistency because you're not expected to have as many injuries that you have to deal with. But, no, I think we've seen a lot of what Frank de Boer wants to do. I mean, I think sometimes we overrate this stuff because there's not many managers that have such a rigid thing here. I mean, Matias Almeida is maybe a little more rigid. Red Bulls are rigid in that you have to press to be successful there with what they've done historically, and when they try to get away from it, they haven't been able to effectively. You look at other managers around the world, but I think the style that Frank de Boer ultimately wants here is not going to be rigid. It's going to be one that can be 4-3-3 sometimes, can be 3-4-3 sometimes, can be 3-5-2 sometimes, and it's going to depend on what the opposition presents. And you're going to have a team that is talented enough and is good enough at solving problems that can react to what the match calls for. So those are the things I'm looking for. I don't think it looks dramatically different in terms of style of play.
Anything else you want to hit before we go?
No updates yet on any rumors that have popped up, so be ready for that as it opens at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. There will be things that will be rumored to happen, and then there's a potential for trades to be announced starting at 1 o'clock. So be ready for all of that. I'm looking at Miami and Nashville. I'm looking at if the Nagbe deal gets done, how much it's for, what that ends up looking like ultimately. I'm looking at a Houston. I'm looking at this Minnesota potential with Dom Dwyer and Darwin Quintero. It's going to be an interesting next couple of days in the MLS world. It really is. So keep your head on a swivel. and be ready for it. And we'll be back in the morning to talk about that stuff in more detail. But anything that happens today, we will talk about it on Soccer Over There tonight, 6 to 8 p.m. over at the Brewhouse Cafe. If you can't join us, you can listen on the SDH app, soccerdownhere.net, Spreaker. You can listen to the podcast after it completes at 8 o'clock. So hopefully we will see you all there. Hopefully we'll get into it. Kefsey had one about Andonovski before we go, about the U.S. women. Watched some of the World Cup champs yesterday versus Costa Rica. Good start. Side note, my wife thinks the Costa Rica badge looks like an Orangina logo. Can't agree, but have to admit their older logos may have been consulted. Kind of. A little bit. I mean, it's got some of that aspect to it. So I'd have to go back and look at Costa Rica's badge history. I don't know how long they've had that one. Now I'm intrigued. I'm going to go deep into the archives today.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. Yeah, I can kind of see that looking at the vintage Orangina poster. So yeah, I see where you're coming from there. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Kefsey. Now I'm going to be digging into old school logos and such.
Oh goodness. Busy week. We're tracking a bunch of 1v1s with all of the action going on. Obviously, USL Championship in play, some stuff going on in the USL, League One, League Two, NPSL across the board, also chasing stuff in the championship as well. So hopefully we'll have some of these 1v1s. We'll have some other content on the network as well. And it's been really cool to have all of these teams and folks respond and kind of share the game with the rest of all of us instead of just here in the 2-hour format that we have. So it's good to do those every once in a while too.
Yep. Plenty of things coming up on the SDH network. So thanks y'all for being part of it. We'll be back at 6 o'clock with Soccer Over There. Until then, much plot, y'all.
Much plot, y'all.